Hi guys, my name is Mayana. Welcome to my core and welcome to my favorite video of the year, talking about my worst books of the year because I love nothing more than being a hater. I have a good list of books here. I just talked about my best books of the year, so it's like so positive and beautiful. So it's like, I need to get negative and quick. So here we are. Before I even get into like the books that I think are the worst, let me just get into books that I just found just plain boring, because I literally have to separate this list because I'm like, first of all, this list is a little long, which is fine. But then I was like looking at it and I'm like, honestly, I have nothing to say about some of these. Like, some of these are just boring. So the first book I have is Guillotine. This is the first book that I read by this author, and it's basically like, what's the movie called? What's the name of the movie? But it's basically a parody of that movie where like this girl is invited to her boyfriend's like family's mansion for something, and then the fucking servants end up trying to kill everybody. It also reminds me of another thriller book I read a few years ago, but it was just like boring. Like, I was just like, okay, I got and on Libro FM. Lied. This is a hockey romance. Honestly, a lot of these books are very similar, and I don't know which is by which author because they all kind of remind me of each other. If I can remember correctly, Collide is a hockey romance, and this one was like she was supposed to be like tutoring him or something, and it was just really long and really boring. And if I remember correctly, in this one, he was a virgin, and they just acted like it was like such a big deal. And then the way that they wrote it was like supposed to be like a plot twist. Like, it just, at the end of the chapter, it was like, and he was a virgin. And it's just like, okay. Cross the Line, which is a F1 romance, just boring. This author, just boring. Spiral, which was, I think, the sequel of Collide, and this was like a ballerina romance with the hockey player, which I want a good. So two things I'm craving are a good ballerina and hockey player and a good figure skater and hockey romance book. And I'm very particular about my figure skater because my favorite movie growing up was the Cutting Edge movies, specifically the fourth one, I believe. And I have been looking for something that gives me that high. I've been looking for something, and the best I got, Mariana Zapata book. And so I've got, how did I get here? Anyways, was a teenage slasher. This was my first Stephen Graham Jones. Well, okay, no, I just lied. It was not my first. I read his like Final Girl book. Yeah, I just lied. I don't know why I did that. Sorry. But still, I didn't like it. My sister read it. She was pretty intrigued by it, but like she didn't love it either. So The Paradise Problem, I love The Unhoneymooners is one of my favorite Christina Lauren's. Actually, it's the only Christina Lauren book that I enjoy. And this one is about this girl who was dating this guy, and then they broke up, and he had it like his family had it like written in his will where like he needed to get married in order to collect the money, and so they had to like go on vacation to his family's house or something like that, and they had to pretend like they're still together so they can collect this money, and it was just boring. Like, yeah, it's in the boring list for a reason. Ride With Me, which was the sequel to Cross the Line. I should have put these in order, but when I was making it, I wasn't thinking about that. So, whatever. I just read this one. This is like a Married in Vegas book, which I love. Married in Vegas. It's a trope that I crave. And the best Married in Vegas book I've read so far this year was like some random ass like Harley Quinn romance book that is like clearly written for stay-at-home moms, which, I mean, no, of course, that's why I liked it. Ride With Me is like a Married in Vegas trope. Nothing else to say. Swept Away, I've only read one other Beth O'Leary book, and everyone hated that book, and I really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and so I read this one because I'm like, okay, I just convinced myself that I really love Beth O'Leary. She's going to be like my next Emily Henry, and then I read Swept Away, and I just didn't like the main character. I didn't even think the book was boring. Well, yeah, like not a lot happens. They're like stuck on this boat together in the middle of nowhere. I just didn't really like the main character. Like, there's actually nothing wrong with the book. Anyways, now on to the fun stuff, which is being a hater. Okay, first book I have, Ender's Game. I read this book this year because it's a very popular sci-fi book. I didn't have to read it in high school. I've been on my sci-fi shit. You know, sci-fi is one of my favorite genres. I'm like, I'm gonna just read like the book that like is very popular in the genre, Ender's Game. My issue with Ender's Game was just that it was really misogynistic. It was oddly misogynistic for it to not have any women characters in this book. What the fuck? What? And that's why it was misogynistic. That was actually why it was misogynistic. There's a scene in the book where Ender is he's sent off to like this space, the like military or whatever. And like, first of all, he's really young. Also, these characters are really fucking young. That was also another thing about this book that was just unbelievable. Like, I mean, I guess the point of the book was that technology was so advanced that like these young people could just do things like fight in the military. I don't care. I think that shit just doesn't make any sense to me. And so, anyways, Ender was like set off to the military. He's looking around. He's like, there's no women. And basically the author wrote that like, so technology could advance so much that children could be in the military, but it didn't advance like so far that women could be in the military. Like basically it was just like, oh, like women just can't work with our technology or blah, 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 blah. Fuck you. Fuck you. What? Please. If anything, put a woman in there. She would have had that shit turned around in a day. First of all, let's start there. And then another issue I had with the book was that why was the characters, the Ender's younger sister and brother, they decided they were going to take over the world. Do you know what the fuck they decided they were going to do? They were going to start a blog post. They were going to take over the world by starting a fucking... This is not a serious book. This is crazy to me that people in high school have to read this shit. Insane. The next book is Fall of Ruin and Wrath. And this actually should have been in my just boring section, but I wanted to rant about it for a little bit. So this book, can't even tell you what it's about because nothing fucking happens in this book. Because I loved From Blood and Ash. Like, it's not the best piece of literature. It's not the greatest book you'll ever fucking read. But I loved From Blood and Ash. So I was like, okay, period. Like, I'm excited for what other books that she read. And I also loved her other series of Flesh and Fire. Not to be confused with Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, the second book in the fucking... Anyways, whatever. So I'm like, okay, period. Like, she might be that romantic girl. Like, I'm about to read it. This book was so fucking boring. Nothing happens. The main character's name... You don't even find the main character's name. It's like 150 pages into the book. The love interest isn't introduced until 30% into the book. So about 30% the characters are just going around being in, like, fantasy versions of strip clubs. Brothels. Being in, like, brothels. And fucking... That's it. This book, she really just wanted to write a bunch of characters fucking. That's all. The next book is Powerless and Reckless. I actually have a rant review on both of these books. All in all, these books are not original. They actually just got brought up in some TikTok drama recently. If you didn't know, Victoria Avard, the author of Red Queen, made a video talking about her book. And she's like, if you're looking for a book like this, and it's talking about the plot of The Red Queen, which was written in 2015, by the way. And so people in the comments were like, this sounds like Powerless. And so they're accusing Victoria Aveyard of copying Powerless when Red Queen came out almost a decade before Powerless. Came out in 2015. Powerless came out in like 2021 or something. So that pissed me off and that made me mad again. A book is not original at all. And like, yeah, nobody's original. Like, blase, like all of our ideas are not original and blah 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 blah, whatever bullshit you want to spew. My thing is that this book is way too close. Like, there is a difference between it being something being inspired, and it's not plagiarism, because plagiarism is like, it's very specific, and if she actually plagiarizes, like, she could actually get sued. So it's not plagiarism, I know that, but it's not just being inspired either. She damn near copied this story idea and Hunger Games and threw it in here and didn't even make it good. Okay, this book has like it doesn't make any sense. These characters are put into this world to fight. These characters have basically, if you don't know what this fucking book is about, it's about these characters who everyone has there was this plague that happened, so some people have superpowers and some people don't. The king and queen decided they want like the children to fight in like this like Hunger Games-esque thing. So you would think that the people who would be fighting are the people with no powers, right? You would think that the people who are fighting would be the people who have no powers, right? No, it's the people with powers. That makes no fucking sense, because they hate the people without powers. They want them to get out. Also, if you don't have powers, all you can do is just walk through like this desert thing to get like to this other town. So it makes no sense as to why the people stay in this town that they are hated in and they're poor, when they can literally just, and it's not like, oh, the desert, like people who walk through the desert don't survive. No, not that either. It just doesn't make any fucking sense, and you actually also don't know if any characters are dead or not. Like, it doesn't explain anything. Like, they just either disappear. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then Reckless was stupid, and I really hate how like the author has like no original like ality. Like, the way that she names things is just very fucking lazy. Like, why In the second book, people who have powers and people who don't have powers, they have kids together. That's introduced. Do you know what the fuck they're called? Mixers. Anyway, so the next book I have is The Hurricane Wars, and this is Raylo fan fiction. And my biggest issue with this book is that it doesn't stand on its own. Like, I feel like if you read this book without being a Raylo fan, the characters lack a lot of personality and a lot of like backstory and stuff like that. And that's my issue with fan fiction that is now being published, because I feel like a lot of people who write fan fiction, they rely on these characters having backstories and personalities and things that are already established on its own. So then when you start writing fan fiction, you don't have to do any of that because it's already done for you, so you can just jump into the book. And so when that gets published, all of that is taken away, because if you don't know that it's Raylo fan fiction, then you're just gonna be like, okay, who are these fucking people? But like me, even with me knowing that it's Raylo fan fiction, that didn't really do anything, because it's like I need my characters to have personality and like backstory and things going on. And the book is fine, but it just, when I sat and thought about the characters and I'm like, who are these people outside of Raylo? I didn't have an answer. So yeah, I have Broken Bonds. I don't remember this book about. Okay. I just want to rant about why this book has a 4-star rating and the writing is literal shit. So this book, the character, her mom dies, and her mom and her, okay, so everybody is bonded to people, and I think they have multiple bonds. So her mom dies, and people blame her for her parents' death, which I hate books like that. And so then she's like sent to go live with her bonds, and they kind of don't want her because of like all that drama that happened with like the parents, which wasn't her fault. So have like 10% of the book I thought was like fine, but the more I got into the book, the more I realized that the writing was shit, and I just don't understand. This book has a 4.1 star rating. Book Talk should have never been created, y'all. Book Talk should have never been created, because what the fuck? This book was literally shit. Like, literally shit. Like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at my friends. I'm about to unfriend everybody 20 times a lady, and you're probably like, girl, what the fuck is this? I've never heard of this shit a day before in my life. I know. Okay, so I watched this movie earlier this year called What's Your Number, starring Anna Faris and Chris Evans, and I loved this movie. It was so good to me. Like, it was like my kind of movie. And once I finished it, I realized it was a book, and I was like, oh, well, I obviously have to read it, because why wouldn't I? So the plot of both of these stories is, so this main character, Anna Faris's character, she has had sex with 19 guys, and she really wants to settle down and get married. And one day she comes across this article that says that women who have had sex with more than 20 guys will never get married. And so she ends up being like, oh, well, fuck. So her sister is getting married, and so she ends up sleeping with this guy, and she's like, fuck, now I'm at 20. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I want to get married someday. And this article said that women who have had sex with this many guys are never gonna get married. So then she's like, oh, how about I go through all the guys that I've had sex with, and one of them has to be marriable, one of them has to be single, like one of them has to be my guy. It's 20 people, like, why not? So then she enlists the help of her neighbor, Chris Evans, who is a man whore. My favorite trope is man whore neighbor. I love that trope. Like, think Wallbanger, like back in the day. I love whore neighbor trope. It really does something for me. Okay, I don't know. I could never in real life, but it does something. So anyways, Chris Evans' character, his dad used to be like, his dad is a cop, so he's really able to find people. So they have this agreement where if she hides him in her apartment from like his escapade, when he's trying to like escape his one night stands, he will help her try to find her old one night stands. And so they end up forming this romance. And you're probably like, girl, you sound so excited talking about this book. What? And it's one of my worst books of the year, because I read the book. Basically, my issue with this book is that it was dull. I guess I should have put it in like the it's just boring section. I really didn't think the list all the way that through, okay? I really just threw this shit together. Well, I really just threw stuff in places, okay? But yeah, it was just really dull. And his character, the things that they added to Chris Evans' character in the movie really helped it. And this is why I have to stop reading adaptations after I watched them, because for the most part, it's like, I hate when they make changes and then like the changes that they made are better than the book itself. And it's like, damn, well, I can't love it as much because it's not as good. Like, the use of the changes are really good. And I really love the movie. I highly recommend it if you are a rom-com girly, but like, don't read the book. Dead Silence, which I owned this book at one point. I think I unhauled it, or it could be in this pile. It's literally in this pile right here. It's like right here. but there's a stack of books, so I'm not gonna pull it down. But this one is about this woman who wakes up from like a fucking coma or something, and she's on this ship, and like freaky shit is going on. I didn't like the ending. First of all, no, it's not even that I didn't like the ending. I found this book very boring. I thought it was gonna feel like a Doctor Who episode where it was just like, I'm looking for something that feels like a Doctor Who episode, basically. But I thought it was gonna feel like one of those spooky Doctor Who episodes, specifically the one with David Tennant's Doctor, where River comes in and like they're like in this like random library, and like the people, the what are they called? The astronauts that they were working with have to keep their helmets on, and like they're being attacked in their helmets. I thought it was gonna be something like that episode, or like, you know, like a little spooky or whatever. Nothing happens this entire book, and then at the end the plot twist was dumb. Full 300-page book, and you sat here and wasted my damn time. I'm never reading another book by this author again. I'm sorry. Then this book called Monster Pucker by Cleo Evans, which if you watched, well, actually I didn't do a best of the books a year last year because my camera just stopped working randomly and then randomly started working again. I guess I just needed a break, and my camera was like, you're gonna have one. But basically, a book by this author, which I cannot remember the title of right now, she released last year. I really loved it. It was like an alien romance, and so I started reading a bunch of her books, which plays into why I hated this book so much. So Monster Pucker is a monster hockey romance book where like there's like this hockey romance team full of monsters, and this girl is like a reporter, and she is trying to like, or no, she's not a reporter. She's like she's doing something in the locker room, but they think she's a reporter because reporters are always in their locker room. Or she was a reporter. I can't remember which one it was. Basically, they end up seeing her. They're enticed by her. They're like, let's go out on a date. They go on a date. They get freaky. You're probably like, what? How is this that bad that it's on your worst books of the year if you already like the author? And it is because when I read that alien romance book, I was so in love with this author. I read almost her entire backlist. I read her entire like story, like sips and whatever plot story that she had. All of her books are the same. All of her books, the characters, and the other series that I read, it literally was about first dates and like blind date with like a monster, which is cool on concepts, but every single book is the same. These characters go out on the date, and then they end up like being like, let's have sex. So then they have sex, and then they end up falling in love, and that's it. And it's like, but when it was in that series, it was fine. But then I started reading books outside of her series, and it's like she only knows how to write. And then honestly, even the alien romance book that I read was the exact same. She's literally writing the exact same plot line over and over and over and over and over. And she has a lot of books and over and over and over again. And it's like, I love her. I love her writing. I love the fact that her books are so diverse. That's how I read all of my like. I read so many queer like books. I read so many like I remember I read like I read a reverse harem with like 4 women, with all women. You don't get that type of shit in like regular romance books. That's why I love monster fucker romance, because you get representation for queer people, disabled people, people of color. You get the representation you don't get in like regular romances, which is why I love that genre. But this book disappointed me so much, and I don't think I ever want to read this author again, because why are you... Come up with something else. Come up with something else. I love you. You are a good writer. Come up with something else, lady. Damn. Then the next book on my list is Electric Idol. And this is the only book on the list I own because I read the series. Duh. And so I actually don't own the rest of the series, which is crazy because books that I own I didn't care for, and then the books that I don't own I do care for. So the reason why I still have this book, because you're probably like, why do you own a book that you don't like? The only reason why I have this book is because I really enjoy the series. And like, there are some books in the series that like I loved, and then some books in the series that I hate. It really depends. Follows Psyche and Eros, which actually, if you don't know, this series is like a Greek series, and it follows like a bunch of Greek couples. So a big reason why I like was disappointed by this is because Psyche and Eros, I love Eros. Eros is one of my favorite Greek gods. I love like I love Eros, like period, right? So I was really excited for them. Psyche and Eros is one of my favorite stories. This one was such a letdown. It was so boring. Look at how fucking thick this is. It was so fucking boring. And it doesn't go in the boring section because I just feel like this book... Like, my big issue, despite the fact that it's boring and it's a full-length novel, and, like, I love Katie Roberts. She writes a lot of short stories. She wrote one of my favorite books of last year. She writes a lot of, like, short, or 2021. She wrote one of my favorite books of, like, 2022. She writes a lot of, like, shorter books, and I think that's the issue is, like, when I go into her, I know that I'm gonna pick up, like, some random-ass smutty book versus when I pick this book up, It was like thicker, so I'm thinking it's gonna have plot, and it didn't. And my biggest issue with the series is that it doesn't make fucking sense. It doesn't make any sense. So basically, they have like people, and these books have like little pictures on the inside. So I don't know how I'm gonna hold the microphone and show you, but so basically, they have, everyone is like, you know, they have like the Greek gods and stuff like that. But like, so you have like the inner circle: Hades, Zeus, Poseidon, Hera. What? Zeus, Hades, Hera, Poseidon, right? Those are the inner circle. And then you have the 13 and then children of the 13, right? So the people in the inner circle, those are just titles. So Poseidon is a title. He's not a person. And so somebody like, say, Helen wants to be Zeus. She could be Zeus, but they would start calling her Zeus and she would no longer be Helen, right? But she's also the daughter of Zeus, which like doesn't make any fucking, it doesn't, when you like, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. And the author doesn't like describe it very well. And she just like, it's like she understands what's going on, but she doesn't take the time for her audience to go on. So honestly, I've kind of just stopped giving a fuck, because certain books, they are good. The books that I like the most are the books where it's like multiple people, like when it's like more than like three, when it's like 2 to 3 people are like my favorite books. And then the books that I don't care about are the books where it's just one person, because a lot of them repeat the same plot lines of like this whole fake dating plot line. It's really popular right now, and I think because it's really easy to write. It's annoying. And then the next book I have is Gothicana. I have a rant review on this book. This is actually kind of cheating, because I'm pretty sure it was one of my worst books of last year, and then I reread it this year to do a rant review on it. So I just wanted to put it on this list because I hated that book, and I wanted to give myself some promo because it's one of my favorite videos that I've done, and I read the book twice. And so the last book on this list is Pucked, and this book sucked. This book is a hockey romance, obviously, because like the only like type of tropes that have these fucking puns. But it's about this girl who and basically her stepbrother and her have like a romance. Like, all in all, her and her stepbrother have like a romance. And I mean, well, that's the plot of the book, basically. And my issue with this book is that it sucked. Like, the writing is fucking terrible. First of all, the main character refers to her. First of all, the book starts off with her pleasuring herself, and then her mom's walk in, but she slut shames every single woman that she sees. All the like puck bunnies, because if you don't read hockey romances, they call like their little fangirls like puck bunnies, or like, it's kind of like what are like the rock star versions called? Whatever the fucking rock star version, like, whatever the fucking, you know, the girls that follow, they're like that version of like hockey romances, right? So every time she sees a puck bunny, she's like slut shaming them down. But the book started off with you pleasing yourself, okay? And then she refers to her coochie as her beaver multiple times. Instead of saying kissing, she says mouth fucking. Like, her stepbrother sees her making out with this guy, and she goes, I was about to mouth fuck this guy. And it's like, it's corny. You could tell this book was written by a millennial because it has such millennial humor, which is fine, but then you're corny on top of it. You're pissing me off. And then also, she degraded the stepbrother so much. Like, she just decided that him and all jocks were just dumb, and every second she could, she would just call him stupid. And she ends up making out with this guy on the hockey team, and the first thing that she assumes about him when she sees him is that he's stupid. And do you know how annoying you have to be for me to defend a man? And I didn't even care about the male interest, and the romance was just like whatever. Like, it was whatever. I just feel like the book itself, like, the writing fucking sucked, and people literally read anything, and that is what I discovered this year. That is what I learned this year. If you watch my favorites video, like, I learned so much about what I love, but I learned so much about people with what I hate. And what I learned this year is that you guys will literally read anything and give it 5 stars. But yeah, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.